Hey, what's up guys? Matt Laidlaw here, coming to you from the oldest, largest, and finest Harley-Davidson dealership in the greater Los Angeles area, Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson. So I know the Iron is a really popular model, so I'm going to be doing a review and a test ride on the 2018 Iron. There hasn't been a whole lot of changes this year from 17 to 18, but we're going to do this again, and maybe I can bring out a couple new perspectives or more information that I didn't quite cover in my 2017 review. Alright guys, so we got a 2018 Iron 883 here. This is the industrial grade denim. It's a brand new color this year. A lot of guys have bought these bikes in black denim, which is a very popular, the #1 most popular color in this bike. So I decided to do something a little bit new. So the Iron 883 was first introduced in the 2009 model year, and it was one of the earlier bikes that was introduced to kind of kick off Harley-Davidson's dark custom revolution that was going on at the time. Harley-Davidson completely revamped the overall look of their Sportsters during this time. That dark custom era was kind of started in 2007 with the Nightster. The Nightster has since been discontinued, but this is kind of the younger brother of the Nightster. The Nightster was a 1200cc bike with a spoke wheel, and they didn't have some of the black highlights that this bike has. But then a couple years later, they came out with the Iron and made it an 883 cc displacement, and this bike has been extremely popular ever since. It's in the top 3 best-selling bikes, at least in Southern California area. So here's a shot of the shocks, guys. In 2016, that was kind of the year of the Sportster for Harley-Davidson. They did a lot of things to really upgrade the ride quality. And this is the premium ride coil-over gas emulsion shock that has that preload adjustment ability on with the 2 discs at the top. I'll put a video link in a card here to show you guys a little bit more detail on that adjustable suspension. They changed the seat here in 2016 as well. They call it a tuck and roll seat. It's a lot more comfortable than the previous generation model seats, and it looks kind of cool too. They also changed the graphics in 2016 on these bikes as well. So yeah, 2016 was a year that really was a major overhaul for these bikes. So if you're looking at used ones, the difference between a 15 and a 16 is quite significant. Just a tidbit of information there for you. So the Iron 883 really plays on the bobber era styling. So that post World War II grunge look, a greaser rat rod type look. Here's a shot of the side mount license plate. So fenders are all chopped, and as a result, you got just the side turn signals, the 2 bullet turn signals, and you got the side mount license plate. Here's a shot of the controls. So you have mid mount controls, so definitely suited for shorter riders. And the graphics are on the side as a new graphic that came out in 2016 as well, with that eagle holding that shield that says Iron on it. Here's a shot of the brakes, 4-piston caliper brake, and the brakes were upgraded somewhat recently as well. I want to say the Sportster brakes were upgraded in either the 2015 or the 2016 model year. So stopping power has been improved on these, and the stopping power is very good suited for these bikes now. I would say even the old brakes weren't that bad, but these are definitely better, the upgraded brakes. So you got a 3.3 gallon fuel tank. So yeah, you're not really a big long range fuel tank on this bike. That's one of several things that I'll go into in this review that kind of makes this bike more of an around town bike, kind of an entry level motorcycle in the Harley-Davidson world. Here's a shot of the gauge. So really simple speedometer there. This little toggle switch is going to toggle between your trip A and your trip B, your clock, and you have a gear and RPM digital readout on there as well. I want to say that change came about in 2014, I want to say, where they introduced the new electronics on these bikes. Pretty simplistic, not that it's some real technology driven motorcycle, but okay. So again, 91 octane in these, or the equivalent of premium fuel, and it's a 3.3 gallon tank. You're gonna get somewhere around 45 miles to the gallon on something like this, depending on your riding. So yeah, you're probably going to be filling up every, you don't want to run completely out of gas, so maybe every 110 miles or so. And you got your ignition on the side there, and then you've also got your fork lock here. So turn the bars to the left, put it in, turn it a quarter of a turn clockwise, fork locks the bike. So those are the two areas where the key is used. And you've got kind of this retro style pan air cleaner cover. That was another change in 2016 as well. It's kind of a ribbed style air cleaner. Exhaust is all blacked out now. The heat shields and the mufflers, it wasn't always that way, but in the last 3 years they put more black components on this bike. I believe that was 2016 as well. So here's the power graph that's taken out of Harley-Davidson's Screaming Eagle Performance catalog, and this right here is a kit that bumps the 883 to a 1200 cc. So you always have that option if you buy the iron, and as you ride it more and you feel like maybe you need more power, you always have the option to bump it up to 1200 cc. But really why I'm pulling up this graph is just to kind of show you guys and illustrate where the power is at stock. So the torque, you got about 45 foot-pounds of torque, and then you got a little over 40 horsepower. These lines right here are what you're going to get out of the 1200 Screaming Eagle conversion kit, which is a little bit higher than what you're going to get out of a stock 1200 cc bike, just because the cam and the tune is a little bit different. I think it's a higher compression piston as well. But a stock 1200 cc bike is about 70 horsepower, or excuse me, 70 foot-pounds of torque, and is right at about 60 horsepower. So it's about 50% more power on the dyno chart, which I don't feel like real world power riding down the road that it's 50% more power. It's definitely more powerful, and you can feel it, especially when you're rolling on the throttle real quick. That acceleration, you can definitely feel better acceleration in a 1200 cc bike. But these figures here may look really low. They are really low. But it's funny how the 883, especially to a newer rider, this thing does not feel underpowered at all. Now, to an advanced, experienced rider, yes, this bike is going to feel underpowered. So this is Harley-Davidson.com. I always like to go here to point out a couple more pieces of information. So the raw, blacked out, stripped down, custom style, that's kind of the best way to describe the bike. It starts at $8,999. And that's a pretty aggressive price. I feel like you can't even buy a decent dirt bike nowadays for under $10,000. So yeah, pricing's good. Definitely conducive to newer riders. So here's a couple shots that Harley-Davidson has on their site. And I know a question that I'm going to get asked in the comments is if this is a good beginner bike. And yes, I would say that this is a good beginner street motorcycle. It's low to the ground. It's relatively light. Are there better learner bikes out there? Yeah, there are. I always tell people, if you guys watch my videos, that dirt bikes, I feel like, is the best way to learn how to ride a motorcycle. It exposes you a lot of different variables with traction and everything, and you can get a used, beat-up dirt bike for relatively inexpensive, and it's not the end of the world if you crash the bike or lay it down in the dirt. The consequences are far fewer, than if you go out and buy a brand new Harley-Davidson and you dump the motorcycle. It's going to cost you a pretty penny to get it all fixed up. But if you do go that route, which I'm not opposed to at all, I see a lot of people doing it and they're very happy with it and they learn how to ride no problem. But if you go that route, I always recommend getting an engine guard for the bike. Engine guard is going to really reduce the amount of damage the bike takes if you do tip the bike over. So here's a couple key points on the motorcycle. Like I already said, low seat, slam suspension, which is great. Low seat heights is really good for newer riders. And let me jump into some of the specs here. So 53.8 foot-pounds of torque. So that's at the crank. The power that I showed you was at the rear wheel, which is about 45 foot-pounds of torque. The Iron definitely is a torqueier feeling bike, and that's one of the things that people expect from a Harley-Davidson is they want that torque, and the Iron is going to give it to you. Now, it's not like a torque beast or anything like that. I mean, it's still a little 883 Iron, but it is a torqueier motorcycle, especially when you compare it to some of the comparable bikes like your Ninjas or some of the other bikes that are real popular for newer riders. So you have a couple options on this motorcycle as well. So you have ABS as an option at $795. You can get that from the factory. The security is an option as well. It's $395. And here's some just specs on the engine. Air cooled. The name of this engine is called the Evolution. And fuel injected. All these bikes have all been fuel injected since 2007, so that's nothing new there. So the weight you're looking at when it's running is 564 pounds. A bike that I think a lot of people are going to compare this to is the Street 500 750, and then the Street Rod 750. The Street Rod comes in at a little under, well, the Street Rod's a little over 500 pounds, but like a Street 500, Street 750, they're like, I want to say 480, 490 pounds, so they are a little bit lighter. If you're looking for the best Harley-Davidson for a beginner, I would recommend the Street over this bike. However, you get a lot of benefits from this motorcycle that you don't get from the Street. The Iron 883 is more of what you'd expect from a Harley-Davidson, that torquey, low-end grunt feeling. It's air-cooled. The sound is going to sound a lot more like what you'd expect from a Harley-Davidson. You can put exhaust on this thing and really have this thing come alive. Full exhaust system, like a Vance & Hines system or something like that, is really going to make this thing sound really, really mean. So then fitment options as far as parts. These bikes have a lot of parts that will fit it. So yeah, great bike to customize. So I've ridden the Iron 883 several times over the years, and every time I do a new review, I try to kind of clear my head of pre-existing thoughts about the bike and try to just take a fresh start and a fresh look at the bike. And so that's kind of what I try to do this day. And so let me just kind of start off with some of the information I think a lot of you guys want to know, and that is my recommendations of who I recommend this bike to. And I recommend it to guys that are getting into the Harley-Davidson world, that want to get a bike that's a little bit more affordable than most of the big twins. The least expensive big twin would be a Street Bob, and that starts off at about $14,500 now. And so this bike is significantly less expensive. But This is also a great bike for people that want to have a lot of the things that people love about Harley-Davidson, and that is the sound and the look and the feel, really clean lines, simplistic engineering. This style, this bobber style, is really hot right now, and so the iron delivers this blacked out cosmetic really well, and the bike is extremely customizable. So there's a lot of different aftermarket and genuine Harley-Davidson parts that are made for these Sportsters, and that really is a huge plus in some people's eyes. They want a bike that they can kind of make their own, and that's what Harley-Davidson is really known for. And this bike, there's really not a whole lot of bikes out there that are better than this one as far as availability of parts to make this, your own. Everything from bars, seat, foot pegs, grips. The list goes on and on. Wheels. So this is a great bike to tinker with if you want to, do your own customization work, or even if you want to have it paid to, make it your own and do certain things on the bike. This is a great bike to do that. So guys that want to get into the Harley scene, that are maybe it's their first Harley-Davidson, maybe they don't want to break the bank, this would be a good bike to do that. Now, the shortcomings of this motorcycle relate to longer distance, higher speeds for longer duration type riding. So one of the things when I'm selling bikes to people is I always ask them, what their riding experience is and how they plan on enjoying their bike, or what type of riding they plan on doing. So if you're someone that, and maybe a lot of people have friends that get them into motorcycling, you should know what type of riding your friends do as well, because I get a lot of guys that come in and say, hey, I want to ride with my friends are urging me to get a bike to go hang out with them on the weekends because I always get left behind because I'm the odd man out that doesn't have a motorcycle. Well, what do your friends do? Because if your friends get on the bike and do 200-300 miles plus in a day, then the iron may not be the best option for you. And while I'm on the freeway, maybe I'll comment as well. These irons have come a long way since they were first introduced in 2009 as far as the comforts at higher speeds. Right here I think I'm probably doing like 65 or so, and just the new shocks with the new suspension in the front end as well, the new forks, combined with the new seats, it's a lot better out on the highway. I didn't adjust the suspension for my weight this day. I probably should have. If I did, I probably would have had an even more comfortable ride. But even when the suspension's tuned properly, and with this newer upgraded suspension that came out in 2016, this is still not an ideal freeway bike. That and the power is a little bit lacking as well. When you really roll on the throttle at 65 miles an hour, you don't have that instantaneous power where you can move around somebody or pass somebody. You've kind of got to wait for it and build up momentum. So yeah, the power is not the best freeway power delivery that is available out there. So yeah, not the best freeway bike. You only have 3.3 gallons, so you're going to be running out of fuel quicker. If you're riding in a group of guys that have touring bikes that have 6-gallon fuel tanks, well, you're going to be the guy that is always going to be worried that you're going to be running out of gas when you go out on a secluded road somewhere. So that's not something to be fun to be worrying about. So definitely another reason why this isn't really a good cross-country bike. This bike really shines in urban areas, the type of riding where I'm riding in this video. Really good for if you live in California, splitting lanes, does that really well. And it is on the lighter side as far as Harleys go. It's a little under 600 pounds. So real light, nimble, easy to maneuver around other cars. So it's definitely got that going for it. And everything's pretty simplistic on it as well. The controls, it's just really easy to learn everything on the bike very quickly. There's not a whole lot of additional electronics where you got to really learn the instrumentation very much, and that can be said for most Harleys actually. But yeah, who I'd recommend this bike for is people that maybe you have been riding for a while, but you don't plan on really getting out on the open highway and doing a lot of freeway riding, or out in secluded areas, national parks, things like that. If you don't plan on doing that type of riding, the iron can be a decent little ride for you. if your world is within, you know, like a 30-40 mile perimeter and you don't do rides much beyond that, the bike can be real decent for you. If you plan on riding with a passenger, that can be done. You can add a passenger pillion to this bike that matches the rider pillion, and you can also add a passenger backrest on this bike, so you've got all those options as well. But again, when you put that additional weight on there, that makes it that much more likely to not really have the best handling properties and comfort properties when you load up this chassis with that additional weight.
Alright, we just got off the 2018 Iron 883. Both Andrew and I took it out and rode it. I've ridden them before, but this is Andrew's first time riding an Iron. He's owned a 48 before, so what were kind of your thoughts, Andrew?
Well, getting off my Dyna and jumping on this thing, obviously it's a lot smaller bike, less power. But honestly, I felt it was really smooth. The gear selector, the gear changes, the transfer of first and second, third gear was very seamless, man. The throttle was very smooth. Power delivery was very nice. I had like you said, I had a 48. I love that thing. It was actually one of my first Harleys. It was a really cool bike. It's good to look at, but for me and my riding style, I like something to go further distance on. But my first impression is really good on it. I mean, it's generally, I get a lot of people calling for new riders, you know, calling about the Iron 883. It's a good bike. It's not big, it's light, handles its weight very well. But yeah, I mean, it was really good, and I enjoyed riding it, you know.
So as far as the limitations, I usually tell people it's not the best distance bike because of the tank size, kind of the power, and the suspension. Do you have anything kind of to add to that, or would you kind of disagree with those?
I agree with that. I mean, it's not like you can't do it. There's just more practical bikes that Harley offers to do longer distance riding on. A lot of people get these bikes when they're new to riding, and they keep them for 2 to 3 years, and they generally graduate from there to something like a Softail or a touring bike. But it's a great bike to learn on, and it's very, very easy to move around as far as, you know, riding it, going between traffic and moving around a garage.
So a good beginner Harley-Davidson for
definitely.
Is there a rider that's maybe a more advanced type of rider, but maybe does a little bit different riding preferences that you'd recommend it to? Or, like, I guess what I'm saying is it only a beginner that you would recommend?
It's not only a beginner bike. If a rider is more experienced, has been riding for years, it would be personally a good secondary bike. If someone has a big touring bike and they don't want to commute on that every day, or they're always getting caught up in traffic, it's a good, I would say, a secondary bike.
How does this engine compare to the 1200cc? Like, where do you really notice it, I guess? And, there's a real noticeable difference in power?
Yeah, as far as the low end giddy up. I mean, it still has a lot of torque, but comparing it to a 1200 or the big twins, I mean, yeah, it's not scary torque. It all depends on the person, but it's very tamed and smooth, and it's not jerky to say. I would recommend it to the new riders and the people that are looking into, you know, looking at an FZ07, you know, a Ninja 300, something along those lines, and they're considering, you know, the Indian Scout. You know, this is Harley's answer to that. And I mean, I personally like it out of all the other bikes. Not biased or anything, but I've always liked Harleys. I like the V-twin and the sound, and it has that classic Harley sound when you throw some pipes on it, man, and it's really cool.
Thanks for watching my 2018 Iron 883 review, guys. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I try to get back to everybody and answer any questions. If you're looking for a Harley-Davidson in the Southern California area, come see me or Andrew at Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson. And if you haven't already, hit that like button if I was able to help you out on the video, and subscribe to my channel for future Harley-Davidson content. Thanks, guys.